Hello everyone, it's my pleasure to be here. And yes, I'm CML patient, as you heard. I was diagnosed when I was 18, so now it's my 11th year. I'm still on therapy, taking pills every day. Giora just briefly told a bit of my story into patient advocacy. I would just maybe add to it is, since I was 7, I know that I would be a lawyer. You don't normally maybe do that. There are some crazy people like that. And it didn't really change. I knew that I would be a lawyer, just I didn't know in which direction to go, right? Criminal law, civil law, litigation, whatnot. And when I got this diagnosed, and then I did this civil engineering at that time. It was first online petition, blogging, etc. The Facebook and Twitter was not existing then. I was thinking that now I will have to use my own story and get all of this legal knowledge so I could help other patients, so I would have the cause. And that cause is, motivating me. So after graduating, I was working in the biggest law firm. Then I was advising the president of my country as a legal advisor to the president. And I left this year just to focus more on NGO activities. And that was, again, many people were saying, look, you're a young guy. You are in top of where, the people would like maybe to go. You're advising the president of the country, can make a lot of impact there. And why are you leaving? And when I was thinking it's what we are in those rules and we're in the sandbox, in the rules that define us. It's not right. We as a patients, we have our passion, and this passion should lead us forward, not just in cages, is what we are allowed to do or not. So this is like my message towards this patient advocacy, that patient advocacy is not a profession, it's like a call. So it's like you cannot have a profession like being a Buddhist monk, right? You cannot say as a profession that now I will be a priest. It comes with a call. So it's a bit of a call that we are having as a patient advocates. We have our technical knowledge, we have our professional background, we have our skills and traits, but this is what we are giving back to society. And what I was asked to talk about is not the broad overview of a patient advocacy, because it's a maze in itself, but just to be more specific onto the projects that some of the questions tapped into, what's already out there. And I will talk about the systemic education of patients into becoming expert patient advocates. And that is just by defining and setting a bit of a context through this initiative, which is called European Patients Academy and full European Patients Academy of Therapeutic Innovation. Could you please raise hands if you have heard this name before, EUPATI or European Patients Academy? Okay, that's good. You're making my life easier. It was nearly half a room from what I was seeing, so that is good. Then I will try to maybe shed a bit of more reason why do we need this. So if I would be giving this talk 15 years ago, I would say the patient advocacy would have now a path to knock on every door and make yourself heard. Now, actually, we have our doors open at every level, at every aspect. So it's not just regulatory, it's not just development of clinical trials, it's not just media. It's just like patients are now wanted everywhere, and patient advocates. And the actual problem is that we do not have enough experienced patient advocates to conduct all of these activities. And reality is most of us are not being paid for the activities we do. This is our coming from the, as a pro bono activity. We lawyers use that term. And that's a bit of a problem, because you cannot achieve that much if you're just allocating a bit of time, whereas so much of the different input could be provided. And now going into there, I would say that where the input is important, it's not just about clinical trials in itself. And you see yourself through your daily activities that now you're here at medical sessions, you're gaining that knowledge about your disease, about what do you need to know about the treatment mechanism so you could help yourself. But that's just one stage, right? It's helping yourself or giving advice to other patients to do that, but that's not changing the world for you. That's not benefiting that community or just solving the issue as is. And because all of us have a different perspective of what we want to get out of this. If I would ask you why would you want to be here, I think the common denominator would be to get more knowledge, to share, grow, help others. That's the slogan that we're using also in CML community. But that also means every one of us has an individual perspectives of what we try to achieve. Some of us would just want to be there, then you would know there is a new breakthrough therapy available, so to give a first enroll into clinical trials and get it. Others would be that it's not just good enough. I want to not just have a good therapy working, but I want to have a good quality of life, and eventually I want to be disease-free. I want to live my life as a normal person with no particular chronic disease or lethal disease. And that has to be taken into consideration, because it's not like you are building soldiers in the army. You have your drill, you do this exercise, and then you're good to go in whatever direction. It's also a bit of internal journey. What is your path, and what are the tools that you need to be successful in that path? Sorry, I'm not going through all of the aspects in the slides, because just to allow for more time. I'm not sure if you are able to see this, but that's a good research that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2010. I'm citing it because it's a very credible source. And the example is, this is the graphs of adverse events that you see: nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, I think. And orange line here is what patients reported at incidence rate, and this blue line is what physicians reported. So I have two remarks to make. First thing, when we are calling patient-reported outcomes in all the medical literature, and for the 15 years, patient-reported outcomes meant something which is not reported by patients, which is neither the outcomes, which is an opinion of the doctors. So that's how sophisticated the clinical language is. That means we're actually talking bollocks. And actually, when you want to say, what do the patients feel? Do they have this adverse event or not? Do you ask doctor or do you ask patient? In whatever research you would, so go to the primary source. So the primary source is the patient, because the doctor may dilute this information. So I'm happy to show this slide and just to show the difference. That when you think nausea, it's not that bad. It's like, what do we see? Like 50% of doctors were saying the patients are nauseous, whereas like 80% of patients were saying that actually we're having this nausea. But when we go into diarrhea, it's like doctors who say it's no problem, 10% of us, and 30% is for the patient, and that's just statistics. This doesn't even capture that maybe diarrhea means that it's not grade 2 diarrhea and 1 in 3 patients is getting it, but maybe that means I cannot leave this room and go somewhere to see my friend because I may have been in trouble on the way. And so I would just prefer to be here. So you come to me. And all of these aspects that are not really being captured, and this is the benefit that the patient voice is bringing into the research, and not to distorting the reality as is. So now, shifting towards the party. It was initiative funded by European Commission in a joint effort in IMI, it's Innovative Medicine Initiative, where initially 1 billion in EU money was pulled by European Commission, 1 billion of pharmaceutical companies. And as part of that, research has spurred, etc., but a bit of that money was also going into training patients to be patient advocates at an expert level. So this started already in February 2012, and it's just an example that in order to get things right, you need a big consortium. So this consortium included pharmaceutical companies, regulators, EMA included, academia, patient organizations, and actually patient organization was leading this project, European Patients Forum. And the goal was to create different tiers of information of delivery that's already out there. Just as a front note, it's open source. Whatever is out there, you can use free of charge. It's under Creative Commons, so that just you reference that and you can copycat, translate, and adapt and do what you want. And the thing that you should be aware is that now there's an online course available. It's like Coursera, right? So you can go online, you read the material, you see the videos, you take the tests. And when it was done in this project, it also included 2 face-to-face meetings, 5 days each. So I was lucky to be on the first cohort of this course when we had 50 patients selected from Europe to go there and be trained in 18 months to know on these aspects that you see. That's 6 different aspects, from discovery of medicines, preclinical, to regulatory, and to health technology assessment. And that is still related to research and development. And that doesn't mean that covers all that you need to know in patient advocacy. That covers the necessary background for you to sit in front with certain stakeholders who are professional. So healthcare professionals, academics, regulators, politicians that might be just taking you seriously in what you're saying, but that's really explaining how this world of the medicine's development work, right? So you have this course that I know now Giora, for example, is taking, and I want you to be aware of that, because there's like every year there is a call for the patients who want to be involved and enrolled in this course, and then you can apply and be present. What we were just briefly talking with Giora, he's saying, I didn't expect this to be so much information, and I don't have time for all of that to read. And that's really a comprehensive world of data out there. But in order, you know, for us to be taken seriously, and to second on what Alfonso was saying, that you need to know your data. And you need to speak evidence. So in order to speak evidence, you need to know how this evidence is being generated, to say what is a good trial from bad trial, to say that it's not fine if you call the doctor-reported outcomes patient-reported outcomes, and to be this as a widely accepted term. So that's one thing. Another thing is Upati Educational Toolbox. Well, you don't really need to find the link. Just Google Upati and you will get all of that you need to see. And this toolbox includes various leaflets that were collected throughout various patient organizations in Europe, a lot of gathering of glossary terms and a combination of research data, etc. And then you have this internet library, which is pitched at a lay patient level. So not as a level that would include a medical jargon, but as something that you could explain to your peers. So your mother, for example. So this Upati Patient Expert Training course, I think it is very lengthy process, but it's worth it. So if you would say you would graduate with masters in something, so by doing that, you would graduate with masters as a patient advocate to understand how the R&D works. And I would just encourage you to follow up the process and just apply there. Or just, if you don't think it is possible to go, you know, and spend this 18 months on a course, which is really a heavy time commitment, just go out there, look for that information which is readily available, get the pieces that you want. Whenever you're going to the conference, you need to prepare something, you need to get a bit of this background on what the gene therapy is all about, what is the randomization of clinical trials means. So go up and look. So what also Upati has, so it's that it's not just captured there in the European bubble of like trying to solve things but not really capturing what happens at national level. But this Upati is also established at national level in these countries. I won't just mention, I think there's 18 countries involved. So that means spreading that information about what is available there as a source on Upati level at national level. So it's not just to say go there and look for the data, but that means that go there, be active in the conferences, speak in the media, partner with stakeholders, get serious in having systemic approaches towards your regulators. So agencies that approve medicines, agencies that evaluate drugs and for their reimbursement, be contributed to clinical guidelines, so be considered as a professional stakeholder in that. That's not really difficult to start at your own country without that, but that one gives you another layer of helping you, pushing you to get these doors open, because it's done under a sophisticated, you know, mechanism that these people that are patient advocates being active in these national platforms are already quite experienced and we know what we are talking about. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be starting, you know, just in the countries that are not mentioned. And I think Upati as such is really open to spurring more countries and joining it. And I know that this Upati course is now currently being developed from North America. So USA and Canada is working on following the same direction, and that means that in that project FDA is involved, etc. But for the time being, so you get to the point of information which is really specific to how regulation works at European level, but the basic principles, and I would say like 75% of information in the course would be really applicable to other continents of the world as well. And then What also UParty did is to, and constantly does, is to generate this continuous information about guidelines and frameworks on interaction between the patient organization and pharmaceutical industry in order to not to be too dependent on one side, not to overstep, in how to contribute better generation of clinical data and generating real-world evidence, contributing to clinical guidelines. So these are more of a framework documents that, sorry you can't read them in here, but you can go out there and again this UParty guidances, that's what we called, and you can look it up and see what's in there. And I think for you as an MPN network it's also worth reading. They are not that lengthy, nor they are technical, but they are good practical insights into what should be done. So for me, just to tell you what patient advocacy, or like what, you know, patient advocacy advanced level should look like, it's not a topic for a presentation, it's a workshop. It should be, I would say, at least 4 hours workshop just to say on lobbying and all of those things that you should be working towards. But you need to start from somewhere, and this is why I think Yora had a very good idea of just asking me to speak more about UParty, is just to that you could have all of that information available in one place to knowing where to look. As I have 2 minutes left, I won't be going very so much in detail, but just to see that the patient's input is now required in every stage, not just of the development, but also of explaining why this development has happened, and not just to your patients, but to the society at large. And for that, you need a very different set of information. And that means that you are bringing a lot of input with your own experience in what you can contribute to what process. This is busy slide. Sorry, I'm not able to go there in detail, but these two simple basic principles should be applying. That scientific involvement and policy must always go together. So you cannot just tweak research and not connect that to any policy message, and you cannot just say we want this or that to change without backing it up with the data. And another aspect is that it is actually not too high level to understand that the people who do research are smart people, but that doesn't mean that you are stupid people who wouldn't understand that. And this information, which is now everyone is really trying to make explainable what the research is all about, because it gets maybe sometimes too technical, and you can do it easier. And that type of programs like UParty, they help you to really understand what these complicated processes are all about. So now in these 50 seconds that I have left before we go to the debate, just a few examples of experience how you can contribute to something that has never been done before. So draft a patient-friendly informed consent and then approve it to the bioethics committee. It was for EUROSKI clinical trial, that's something in CML that we did. We managed to take the informed consent from 20 pages to 7 pages without losing any content into it, but by including some graphics, and that was accepted by ethics committee. Or, for example, that you can survey, like what you did ask to Alfonso, what could be the direction MPN is taking. So we did CML adherence survey. We're now looking into treatment-free remission, quality of life survey. It's various surveys like complementary alternative use of medicines that you can ask and just to see if they are benefiting you or not. And there is a whole world of apps what everyone is talking, but there are very few people who know what to achieve with that, because I think by now we have a lot of good apps that are very narrow in what they achieve, and for you as a user, you maybe need to have 20 apps to just get what you need, and for that, things need to change. You need more universal apps developed by patients. For example, this Andaman 7, this is a guy who has CML, and he's developed this app, which is, I'm now saying it constitutes e-health. And it's just in the pocket and it's free of charge. And you can download it from Google or iPlay, etc. for Androids and iPhones. And then you should encourage, as a patient organization network active there, to log the information because that's the data. That's a very simple data that is helpful for you. And then it helps you tailor what you want to do as an organization, what are the needs of your community you're serving, and how can you identify these missing links in the research. And this is the slide for our debate. And as a last note to conclude, so it's actually published in the journal, and it was developed by the young guys like you might know, Bettina Real from Melanoma, and Susanna Leto, who was working in Novartis and is now retired. And they identified the opportunities to identify and include patient voice in the research and development life cycle. So it's not, you see where it comes. It's not coming just from when you have a clinical trial set up and when we hear about something is already in the pipeline, that's already coming to the last of the input, but it should be coming way up front from the setting research priorities to designing protocol to including these practical considerations, why the patients might not want to enroll into clinical trial, what is the other aspects you should be capturing it that, maybe on quality of life data, maybe something of other, complementary alternative medicine interactions that you're taking. And these are, you see, if you would just calculate them, there's more than 10 steps that you should consider being involved as a patient in whatever you have heard now from great professors here on the trials that are ongoing. So the next time you will be hearing about that, you should ask the company who is developing that therapy, why are you approaching us only now? Why didn't you tell us you have this in the pipeline and that this is what you see within mice model, this is how you will try to do your phase 1 trial, phase 2 trial, etc. And that is just for you to understand that it's not something that you come within an asking hand, but you come with an experience which is needed by the industry. Just few numbers every day. Clinical trial is prolonged. The companies lose 8 million euros a day for every day that the clinical trial is prolonged. We also have 70 million patients who are now looking to be there's that many space in clinical trials available globally, and no one is coordinating how to get those patients in there where we have the missing. So we know that's a big world, and this is where I conclude, and I'm open for your questions. Thank you.